Hi everyone, I'm Reading with Jack, and today I'm here with my final video of the year, which is a Top 5 Wednesday about my top 5 books of 2015. Before I start, I just want to say I'm sorry I haven't had any videos in December. I was so busy at the end of term with university writing essays, they were really hard. Then it was Christmas and life was crazy and I had loads of stuff to do then. But in terms of my reading in 2015, it wasn't that bad. I managed to read 18 books, which although may not seem like very many, I've obviously been very busy. The books I've read have definitely been amazing. It's been about quality over quantity. So in 5th place, the 5th best book that I read this year, it is Library of Souls by Ransom, which is the 3rd book in the Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children series. I was so excited when this came out. I got it immediately in the post. I actually did an unboxing video, and in that video I was obviously really excited to read this book, and it did not disappoint. Although I don't think it was as exciting as the previous 2 books, I still thought it was a really enjoyable read. As always, the characters are so easy to connect with, really likeable, and I feel every single emotion that they're going through. The plot as well had loads of different elements to it, particularly the discovery and exploration of the Library of Souls itself. That was so intriguing. I loved exploring that. And as is always the case with Ransom, he adds a new creative dimension to every single book that he writes. The use of vintage images throughout the book, I think it works perfectly. Just gives that book that little bit of extra spark. It just makes it even more impressive. In 4th place, it is the 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield, and as you would expect from the cover of this book, it's a book about books. The main character in this is called Margaret Lear, and basically she's writing an autobiography for this woman called Vida Winters, who is so dark and intense and mysterious. But Margaret herself, she just loved exploring stories and narratives, and I could really connect with that because I also obviously love exploring different stories. The thing that impressed me even more about this book was the references and the intertextuality to Jane Eyre, because that's actually my favourite classic. So the fact that Diane Setterfield was inspired by that and had events in the book that actually mirrored Jane Eyre, it was so fun to actually draw parallels between the two, to compare them. 3rd place is going to A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I read this at the start of the year as part of a review on NetGalley, but because I loved the book so much, I decided to buy the physical copy. I love the main character, Feyre. She is fierce, she's strong and independent, but also she's quite vulnerable at times as well, and I think the fact that she's almost quite flawed makes her very realistic and quite believable. The use of the Beauty and the Beast fairy tale as well was really interesting. It's a retelling of that fairy tale, and although I think quite a lot of the conventions from that fairy tale were followed, I also feel like Sarah J. Maas took it in a completely different direction at times. I really appreciated the fact that although romance was obviously part of the story, it didn't actually seem to take over in this book. There was still a lot of fantastical elements, lots of action, lots of adventure, and as is always the case with Sarah J. Maas, she has an amazing way with words that I cannot stop praising. My second favourite book of the year is one that I've talked about quite a lot, so you're probably not surprised that it's appearing in this top 5, and it is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, which is the 1st book in the Kingkiller Chronicle. The protagonist is called Quoth, and I loved him. I think he's probably the best male protagonist in a fantasy novel that I've read, because I think he's so multifaceted. There are so many layers to his character. He's good, he's bad, he's arrogant, he's lovable at the same time. He's also had quite a troubled childhood and past, which I think makes him feel very realistic. Something that I really liked in this book particular that I think made it completely different to other fantasy books was how, although this is a fantasy world and it's not obviously set in the real world, a lot of the problems that Quoth had were actually very relevant to today's society. Lots of exploration about poverty and suffering and how wealth and finance can affect people. I thought that was eye-opening. Overall, it was just an epic read. If you're looking for a fantasy to start in 2016 that you want to really take your time with and devour, this is the one that you want to read. So we only have one book left now, and that is obviously my favourite book of the year. So in 1st place it is Hollow City by Ransom, which is the 2nd book in the Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children series. The reason why this was the best book of 2015 for me was because it was the most enjoyable, and I rate based on enjoyment, and I loved this book. It was such a page turner. I was engrossed in the book and I couldn't stop reading. In my opinion, the character development in this book was even better than than in the first book. All the characters have different magical abilities and powers. The first book really explained what the abilities were, but in this one the characters were actually using their abilities, and I felt like I could understand their motives even more. The plot was so unpredictable as well. I didn't know what was going to happen next, which is why I had to keep reading and reading, because I just couldn't really imagine where things were going. It was just really exciting, very intense, and above all the writing was beautiful. I always say this about Ransom Riggs, but his use of similes, his use of metaphors and vivid language is just on point. I think it's beautiful to read. So this is the best book of the year, and if you haven't read the Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children series yet, you must read it. So everyone, those are my favourite books of the year. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them. Did they appear in your top 5s or top 10s or 15s or whatever you did? Also let me know if you're planning to read any of these books in 2016. Obviously I completely recommend that you do, because they're amazing. You'll love reading them, hopefully. So thanks for watching everyone, I really appreciate it, and I will see you all again in my next video.